Hello and welcome to my patch notes rundown for the 11th of September. A bit of a late release since Monday was my birthday, but this week's update introduces essential changes to Death Skulls, resulting in a slight overall nerf, whereas Spectral Scythe effectively received a buff through some cooldown changes. We also saw the culmination of the community's harsh criticisms of Hero Pass come to fruition, walking back all of the features that players thought was crossing the line. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Changes to the Death Skulls ability. Buffs will no longer carry from targets it hits over to subsequent targets. What this means is that every time Death Skulls hit a target, debuffs would apply to the damage as normal, but it also carry over all those debuffs onto the next target, stacking multiplicatively. This created an exponential increase in damage with each following hit. The reason Majra Aura was affected by this is because it causes targets to take 5% more damage and not the player to deal 5% more damage. This is also why when you hit a target that was invulnerable, the invulnerability would carry over to all of the following targets, since it's technically a status effect on the monster's side. This is a pretty notable nerf, and even though I can't give a specific overview on how significant it is, at Raziel, where the nerf is definitely the most impactful considering there's double dipping of Undead Slayer and it's a fight less than a minute, I noticed an overall damage reduction of 12%. The last thing that I would like to see be changed with Death Skulls is that right now if the first hit critically strikes, that means all the subsequent hits will also critically strike, whereas if it doesn't, then none of them will. I'd rather have them individually roll on the chance. Retarget range has been increased from 5 to 6 tiles to match the Necromancy range. Targeting has been changed to prioritize damageable enemies, then the player before targeting an enemy that's immune. The Death Skulls animation has also been made larger so it's easier to keep track of. Changes to the Spectral Scythe ability. Cooldown will now occur after the first cast of the ability. This might not sound like a big deal, but it can actually be pretty massive in AoE heavy situations. This reduces the cooldown of the ability from 3.6 to 7.2 seconds depending on how quickly you use the recast, which is a 24 to 46% reduction in cooldown. Expiration duration for recast has been increased from 5.4 to 15 seconds. This again is a pretty big buff to Necromancy AoE, and I personally really like it because it no longer forces players to use the recasts within a very short time period. This allows players to dilute their AoE with abilities that they want to use on cooldown and gives them time to regroup enemies for a more effective use of their abilities. All of these changes accumulate to situations where you finish your third cast of the ability and the first cast is already ready to be used again. Expiration duration now appears as a buff icon. Number of enemies that can be hit with the second and third recast have been increased from 9 to 25. Curious as to why they decided to do this with the second and third recast but not the first. Also, most conventional AoE abilities hit 9 targets, other than Detonate and Magma Tempest, but I'm tempted to know why. Threads of Fate targeting has been changed to prioritize damageable enemies before targeting an enemy that is immune. The special attack of the tier 70, tier 80 and tier 90 Death Guard now counts as a stun against certain enemies like Yakimaru and the Igneous Zerkar. Berserk Blood Essence now works with Necromancy. Conjurations will now display duration beyond 60 seconds as a lighter color on top of the already existing blue headbar. This is very difficult to see, but I guess it's better than nothing. I would love to see them make a dedicated UI in the future for an easier way to monitor souls, necrosis, conjuration durations, and stacks. Because let's be honest, the buff bar is bloated and it's too difficult to find something and keep track of it there. I think at this point, the buff bar should just be for general buffs and style specific buffs should be on a dedicated UI. Life Transfer will now extend the duration of conjurations beyond 60 seconds. Raziel's minions will now consistently despawn when transitioning into phase 4. Aram during Rise of the 6 can now be damaged while flying with Necromancy. Increase the drop rate of congealed blood at gargoyles, necrals, bloodworlds, and terror dogs to reduce reliance on ravenous ghouls. A warning will now be displayed when attempting to start a ritual with a depleted alteration glyph. This can be toggled off in the Necromancy gameplay settings. Pathing has been improved for Sparkling Glyph and Soulstorm ritual disturbances. Moving on to general patch notes. Significant changes have been made to the Hero Pass. I was pleasantly surprised that they came out with not only an apology, but the complete removal of content buffs and reverting to daily challenges. I don't mind level skips being a feature even though they've removed it for now. The bigger problem was how grindy the Battle Pass was, especially when compared to other games. The Hero Pass ended up being roughly 7 times longer. I feel like the main purpose of most battle passes in games are an incentive to get players to log in and briefly engage with dailies with the confidence that players will keep playing the game. The Hero Pass feels somewhat similar, however the difference is that I feel like I stayed logged into the game mainly for the Hero Pass rather than for the content, simply due to how long it took to finish. Changes to Invention Weapon XP. Increased offhand XP gain by 50% to match main hand. Finally, nothing was worse than wanting to level up your dual weapons and your offhand weapon always ended up way behind. Increased two-handed XP gain by 50% to match main hand and offhand. Increased base invention weapon XP gain from 4.1% to 4.5% of the damage. Reduced the impact of a cap that negatively affected weapon XP at very high HP monsters. Fixed an issue that was causing the Seren Godbow to deal less damage than intended when combined with the Decimation's special attack. Increased the number of stakes fletched from Blisterwood logs from 1 to 10. And that's it for this week's patch notes. There were a lot of great changes today. I hope to see JX continue to listen to the community to help come up with more acceptable ways to monetize the game, like maid outfits, cat girl race changes. Anyways, that's it from me. Thank you for watching and take care.